So Newmarket obviously had been around for many years before the Irish potato famine, and as you can see, St. John Cemetery, which is the Catholic cemetery, opened in 1830. So there's no doubt there was an Irish Catholic population prior to the famine. However, in 1847, 48, 49, when the Irish famine was at its worst, we all know there was an influx of hundreds of thousands of Irish people, and many of them came into Canada and traveled as far and further than Newmarket, Ontario. This is when some of the problems began. Firstly, a lot of the famine victims who survived and got to Canada were obviously sick. Typhus was a problem, other diseases. Poverty obviously was a problem. So that when the Irish Catholics did settle in areas such as Newmarket, understandably to a certain extent, people were fearful of them perhaps. However, it went further than that. A lot of the differences between the Protestants and Catholics that were happening in Canada were brought here, and it was alive and well in many Canadian towns, and Newmarket was no different. So much so that where we're standing right now, which is Main Street North, the main thoroughfare of Newmarket is just to my right, Davis Drive. Paddytown became named such because Irish Catholics were virtually corralled into this area. They were not allowed to live south of Davis Drive where other people were. So this term, which people may seem to think as affectionate nowadays, was certainly not intended as such at the time. My great-great-grandparents would have been part of this population that would have lived in this area and would have been forced to live in this area. What an amazing day it must have been for my great-grandfather, who eventually bought a house south of Davis Drive, where he was finally allowed to live and live freely as everyone else did. In addition to that, in Paddytown, where Irish Catholics were forced to live, they were not allowed to hold office, and even the practice of religion was not greatly advocated at the time, even though it did happen, and there were missions and Irish priests that kept the Catholic religion alive and well here. It's very obvious that for many years Irish Catholics did have to endure a great deal of, I'm going to say racism, because they were at the hands of other people who did not understand them, and the socioeconomic conditions in Ireland that they brought with them obviously only hindered that situation. Happily, in 2013, we do just have a sign that says Paddytown. We look back, we remember, we never forget, but there's no sense of there being that sentiment alive here now, which is obviously wonderful. It's nice to know that we've moved ahead in certain areas. But it's important to remember, as I said, and when we look at these memories and signs that make us see what was in the past, we hope that we can move forward and not relive the painful past again.